Bitterroot Valley, Montana Territory, 1878. The bitter cold of winter had finally broken, but Lydia Zane still carried winter in her heart. She stood on her cabin porch, watching the April moon rise over the jagged mountains. At 23, she hadn't expected to be a widow already, burying Samuel after barely 3 years of marriage. The frontier had claimed him like it claimed so many others, unexpectedly and without mercy. A logging accident had left her alone with 40 acres of barely tamed wilderness and memories that haunted her like ghosts. "No one warned me that love doesn't survive out here," she whispered to the empty night, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Her pale blue dress fluttered in the evening breeze, too light for the chill, but she hardly noticed anymore. The cold had become familiar company. Lydia had learned to believe that the Montana Territory took more than it gave. It had taken Samuel, leaving her to fight alone against nature, isolation, and the constant threat of losing everything they'd worked for. A woman alone on the frontier faced impossible odds. The neighboring homesteaders watched with pity, waiting for her inevitable failure. They expected her to sell the land and return east like any sensible woman would. But stubbornness kept her rooted to this harsh place. She needed to prove something to herself, to the memory of Samuel, to the unforgiving wilderness itself. Yet every passing day eroded her determination a little more. What Lydia didn't understand yet was that she wasn't fighting for the land, not really. She was fighting against the terrible loneliness that had settled into her bones. What she needed wasn't more determination, but connection, someone to remind her that life could still bloom even in the harshest conditions. She sighed, turning back toward her silent cabin when she heard it, a horse's labored breathing somewhere in the darkness. Lydia froze, one hand on the doorframe. Out here, unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. "Hello, the house," a man's voice called out, strained but respectful, keeping his distance as frontier etiquette demanded. "I don't mean to trouble you, ma'am, but my horse has gone lame. I could use some assistance if you can spare it." Lydia hesitated, her hand instinctively reaching for the shotgun just inside the door. "Stay where you are." "I'm armed," she called back, her voice steadier than she felt. "Yes, ma'am," the voice responded immediately. "I understand. I'll stay right here in plain sight." She retrieved the shotgun, then stepped back onto the porch. In the moonlight, she could make out a tall figure standing beside a struggling horse. The stranger kept one hand raised to show he meant no harm, the other holding his horse's reins. His face was shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "What's your business in these parts?" Lydia asked, keeping the shotgun visible but not aimed. "I'm Cole Callahan, ma'am, riding for the Circle T Ranch over in Deer Lodge County. Mr. Thompson hired me to help with the spring roundup." He removed his hat, revealing a young face, perhaps 25 years old, with earnest eyes that caught the moonlight. "My horse picked up a stone bruise about 3 miles back. Been walking him slow, hoping to find some help before dark." Against her better judgment, Lydia found herself lowering the shotgun slightly. There was something in his voice, a plain honesty that was rare in these parts. And she knew the Thompson ranch was reputable. "Bring him into the light where I can see," she said finally. Cole nodded gratefully and led his limping horse closer to the cabin. In the lantern light spilling from her window, Lydia could see him clearly now, tall and broad-shouldered, but with a gentleness in how he handled the injured animal. His face was clean-shaven save for a hint of stubble, suggesting several days on the trail. His clothes were dusty but well-maintained, and though he moved with a cowboy's easy confidence, there was nothing threatening in his manner. "He's a good horse," Cole explained as Lydia approached cautiously. "Name's Traveler. Best cutting horse I've ever ridden. I'd hate to lose him to something as simple as a stone bruise gone bad." Lydia examined the horse's hoof, keeping a wary eye on the stranger. The animal was indeed suffering from a nasty stone bruise that needed tending. "I can help," she said finally, decision made, "but you'll stay in the barn tonight. I don't take strangers into my home." "That's more than fair, ma'am." "I'm grateful for any help at all." Cole's relief was evident, but he maintained a respectful distance. "I'm Mrs. Zane," she offered, deliberately using her married title, Lydia Zane. "Thank you, Mrs. Zane. I promise I'll be on my way at first light." Neither could have known that this chance encounter on a cool April night would change everything. The frontier had brought them together, two souls adrift in the vastness of the Montana Territory, each carrying their own private wounds. But the wilderness that had taken so much was about to give something back. The barn was simple but well built, a testament to careful hands. Cole settled his horse in an empty stall while Lydia gathered supplies to treat the injury. Working together in the lantern light, they fell into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. "You know horses," Cole observed as she expertly packed a poultice around Traveler's hoof. "My father raised quarter horses back in Pennsylvania," she explained, not looking up from her work. "I could ride before I could walk, according to him." "How did you end up out here? If you don't mind my asking." Lydia paused, considering whether to answer. Most frontier folk respected the unspoken rule, don't ask about someone's past unless they offer it first. But something in his genuine curiosity made her respond. "My husband and I came out 3 years ago. Samuel had dreams of building something of our own, away from the crowded East." Her voice grew quieter. "He died last winter." "Logging accident." Cole removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Zane, truly." His simple sincerity caught her off guard. No platitudes about God's will or suggestions that she should sell the place and return east. Just acknowledgement of her grief. "What about you, Mr. Callahan? What brings a man to chase cattle across the Montana territory?" Cole smiled slightly, replacing his hat. "Restlessness, I suppose. After the war, I couldn't settle back into Virginia life, too many ghosts." He stroked Traveler's neck absent-mindedly. "Out here, a man can breathe, start fresh, be judged by what he does, not where he comes from or which side he fought for." The mention of the war raised questions, but Lydia didn't press. Everyone in these territories was running from something or toward something, often both. "There's some straw in that corner for bedding," she said, changing the subject. "I'll bring you a blanket from the house." "Thank you. I've slept in far worse places than this fine barn, Mrs. Zane." When she returned with the blanket, she found Cole had already made a neat pallet in the corner. He'd removed his gun belt and laid it carefully within reach, a necessary precaution in these parts, but the gesture of making it visible rather than hidden suggested he wanted no misunderstandings. "I've brought some cornbread and stew," Lydia said, setting down a covered plate she hadn't initially planned to offer. "It's left from supper." "That's mighty kind," Cole said, the genuine gratitude in his voice making her uncomfortable. She wasn't used to kindness anymore, either giving or receiving it. "Traveler should rest that foot for at least a day," she said briskly, retreating toward the barn door. "We can reassess in the morning." "Mrs. Zane," Cole called softly as she turned to leave. When she looked back, his expression was serious in the lantern light. "I want you to know I respect that you're alone here. I'll be gone tomorrow and cause you no trouble." Lydia nodded, uncertain how to respond to his directness. "Good night, Mr. Callahan." Back in her cabin, she found herself oddly unsettled by the cowboy's presence, not from fear, though caution was always warranted, but from something else. She'd grown accustomed to solitude, to the empty rooms and silent meals. Having another human voice break that silence, even briefly, had awakened something she'd tried to bury alongside Samuel. Outside her window, the vast Montana night stretched endlessly, stars scattered like diamond dust across the black sky. For the first time in months, Lydia didn't feel quite so small beneath that immensity. Morning came with pale golden light spilling across the rolling grasslands. Lydia rose early, as was her habit. The presence of a stranger on her property had her more alert than usual as she stoked the cookstove and prepared a simple breakfast of flapjacks and coffee. She was surprised to find Cole already awake and working when she approached the barn. He'd cleaned all the stalls, organized her scattered tools, and was examining Traveler's hoof with careful hands. "The swelling's down," he reported, looking up at her approach. "Your poultice worked wonders, Mrs. Zane." "You didn't need to clean my barn," she said, ignoring his compliment. "Seemed the least I could do for your hospitality." He straightened up, dusting off his hands. His hair was damp, suggesting he'd washed in the creek nearby. "Besides, I've never been one for sitting idle." Reluctantly, she extended the plate of flapjacks. "I brought breakfast." His smile was warm as he accepted it. "Thank you, it's been a while since I had home-cooked anything." They ate in surprisingly comfortable silence, seated on hay bales in the morning light that streamed through the barn door. Lydia found herself studying him when he wasn't looking, the way his hands held the fork with unexpected grace, the thoughtful expression as he gazed out across her property. "Your place has good bones," he commented. "That south field would take corn well, gets the right sunlight." "Samuel and I had plans for that field," she said, the words coming before she could stop them. "We were going to plant it last spring, but never got around to it." Cole nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It's not too late, for the field, I mean." "One person can only do so much," Lydia replied, the constant weight of her situation settling back on her shoulders. "That's the truth of it," Cole agreed. "The frontier doesn't make allowances for being short-handed." After breakfast, they examined Traveler together. The horse was putting weight on the injured foot, a good sign, but Cole frowned slightly. "He's better, but not ready for a hard ride. I should probably let him rest another day, if that wouldn't be imposing too much." Lydia hesitated. Frontier hospitality dictated she couldn't turn away someone in need, especially when animals were involved. But having a man around, even one as seemingly respectful as Cole Callahan, complicated her carefully constructed solitude. Before she could respond, a distant sound caught their attention, the approaching hoofbeats of several riders. Cole immediately tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun belt. "Expecting visitors?" he asked quietly. "No." Lydia moved to the barn door, shielding her eyes against the morning sun. 3 riders were approaching from the main road, and she recognized the center one immediately. "It's Lawrence Briggs, owns the big spread to the north. He's been trying to buy my land since Samuel died." Cole came to stand beside her, his presence oddly reassuring. "Not interested in selling, I take it." "No, this land is all I have left." The riders pulled up in front of the cabin, then spotted Lydia by the barn. Lawrence Briggs was a corpulent man in his 50s, dressed expensively for the frontier. His companions were clearly hired hands, rough-looking men with weathered faces and calculating eyes. "Mrs. Zane," Briggs called out, his voice falsely jovial. "Fine morning for a ride." His gaze shifted to Cole, narrowing slightly. "I see you have company." "Just passing through," Cole said before Lydia could answer. He stepped forward, his posture relaxed but alert in a way that spoke of experience with confrontation. "Cole Callahan, my horse picked up an injury." "Mrs. Zane was kind enough to help." Briggs barely acknowledged him, turning back to Lydia. "I've been thinking about our conversation from last month. I'm prepared to raise my offer for your property, $500, cash money." "That's more than generous for raw land." Lydia stiffened. "The land isn't for sale, Mr. Briggs, not at any price. I've told you that repeatedly." "Be reasonable, Mrs. Zane," Briggs said, his jovial tone slipping. "A woman alone can't manage a homestead in this country. It's just a matter of time before you're forced to sell or lose it entirely." "I believe the lady's made her position clear," Cole interjected calmly. Briggs's face darkened as he finally gave Cole his full attention. "This is a private business matter between neighbors. It doesn't concern drifters." "When a man ignores a lady's wishes on her own property," Cole replied, his voice still even but with a new edge to it, "it becomes concerning to any gentleman present." The tension crackled between them. Briggs's companions shifted in their saddles, hands drifting toward their weapons. Cole hadn't moved, but something in his stance suggested he was prepared for whatever came next. "You do well to remember you're just passing through, Cowboy," Briggs said finally. "Mrs. Zane, think about my offer. Winter comes hard in this valley. Would be a shame if you found yourself without help when you need it most." With that thinly veiled threat, he wheeled his horse around. "Good day to you." The 3 men rode away, leaving a heavy silence behind them. Lydia realized she'd been holding her breath and exhaled slowly. "He seems determined," Cole observed. "He wants to dam the creek that runs through my property," Lydia explained, watching the riders disappear down the road. "It would give him control of water for this whole section of the valley." She turned to Cole, studying him with new eyes. "You didn't need to involve yourself." "Where I come from, a man doesn't pressure a widow on her own land," he shrugged slightly. "Besides, I've never much cared for bullies, regardless of how expensive their boots are." The simple statement, delivered without bravado, stirred something in Lydia. She'd been alone against Briggs's pressure for months, and the unexpected alliance, however temporary, lifted a weight she hadn't fully acknowledged. Well, I appreciate it, though I doubt it will discourage him for long. She straightened her shoulders. About your horse, you're welcome to stay another night. Traveler should be sound by tomorrow. Cole nodded, genuine gratitude in his eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Zane. I promise I'll earn my keep. And earn it he did. Over the next hours, Cole tackled repairs that had been beyond Lydia's ability to manage alone. He fixed the sagging corner of the barn roof, repaired a broken wagon wheel, and split enough firewood to last weeks. Lydia found herself working alongside him, their efforts complementing each other with surprising ease. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds were building over the mountains. They had just finished reinforcing a section of fence when the first fat raindrops began to fall. That's moving in fast, Cole observed, looking at the approaching storm. Best get inside. They barely made it to the cabin before the skies opened. Rain lashed against the windows as thunder rolled across the valley. Lydia hesitated at her own threshold. She hadn't allowed any man except Samuel inside these walls since his death. But leaving Cole in the downpour seemed heartless. Come in, she said finally, pushing the door open. No sense in drowning on my porch. The cabin was simple but comfortable, a testament to careful craftsmanship. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a small kitchen area opposite. A curtain partially concealed the sleeping area at the back. Everything was meticulously clean and organized, from the neatly stacked books on a small shelf to the precisely arranged cooking utensils. Cole removed his hat and stood just inside the door, careful not to track mud onto the scrubbed wooden floor. You have a fine home, Mrs. Zane. Samuel built most of it himself, she said, moving to stoke the fire. He was always good with his hands. The casual reference to her husband surprised her. Usually, speaking of Samuel aloud brought sharp pain, but today the words came naturally. As the storm intensified, they fell into an unexpectedly comfortable domesticity. Lydia prepared a stew while Cole whittled by the fire, each respecting the other's space. The enforced proximity should have been awkward, but instead, it felt almost familiar, as if they'd known each other longer than a single day. You mentioned your father raised horses in Pennsylvania, Cole said as they sat down to eat. Do you have family back east still? Lydia shook her head. My parents passed before Samuel and I headed west. There was a younger brother, but we lost touch during the war. He went south to fight while I stayed north. She looked up from her bowl. What about you, family in Virginia? Just a sister in Richmond. Our parents died of fever when we were young. His expression grew distant. Caroline married well. Her husband survived the war. They have 2 children now. A faint smile touched his lips. I send money when I can, though they don't need it. Gives me an excuse to write letters. You miss them, Lydia observed. Every day, he admitted. But this life doesn't lend itself to settling in one place. Why not? She asked, genuinely curious. Plenty of cowboys eventually claim land of their own. Cole was quiet for a long moment, the firelight casting shadows across his face. I suppose I haven't found a reason compelling enough to stop moving yet. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Or maybe I'm still running from something I can't outride. The honesty of his answer caught her off guard. Most men out here wore their stories like armor, never revealing the vulnerable truths beneath. The war, she asked softly. Partly, I was young when I enlisted, saw things no man should see. He set down his spoon. But it's more than that. After I couldn't face staying in a place where everyone knew what we'd all lost. Out here, the land is too big for ghosts to follow too closely. Lydia understood that sentiment all too well. Sometimes I think the territory is nothing but ghosts, dreams that died, lives cut short. Is that why you stay? Because Samuel's dream is here? The question pierced straight to the heart of something Lydia hadn't fully examined. I tell myself that's the reason, she said slowly, that I'm honoring what we started together, but some days I wonder if I'm just afraid to admit failure, to pack up and go back east with nothing to show for our sacrifice. From what I can see, Mrs. Zane, you're far from a failure. Maintaining a homestead alone takes more grit than most men possess. Survival isn't the same as living, she said, the words revealing more than she'd intended. Outside, the storm raged, rain drumming against the roof and windows. Inside, something shifted between them, a recognition of kindred souls, each carrying burdens visible only to those who knew similar weight. As the evening deepened, they talked of lighter things, books they'd read, places they'd seen, small observations about the quirks of frontier life. Lydia found herself laughing at Cole's stories of cattle drive mishaps, a sound so foreign to her cabin that it seemed to warm the very air around them. When it came time to sleep, Lydia provided blankets for Cole to bed down near the fire. The storm made returning to the barn impossible, and they both carefully maintained the propriety the situation demanded. Yet as Lydia lay behind her curtained sleeping area, listening to the occasional creak of floorboards as Cole adjusted his position by the fire, she felt strangely comforted by his presence. For the first time in months, the cabin didn't feel empty, and for the first time since burying Samuel, Lydia fell asleep without the crushing weight of solitude pressing down on her chest. Morning dawned clear and brilliant, the storm having washed the world clean. Lydia woke to the smell of coffee and found Cole had already stoked the fire and started breakfast. "Hope you don't mind," he said when she emerged. "Seemed the least I could do for imposing on your hospitality." "You're not imposing," she said, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. "It's nice having someone else around." Cole's smile was warm as he handed her a cup of coffee. "Even a trail-worn cowboy." "Especially one who makes decent coffee," she replied, a smile tugging at her own lips. After breakfast, they checked on Traveler. The horse had recovered remarkably well, putting full weight on the previously injured hoof. The unspoken reality settled between them. There was no reason for Cole to delay his journey any longer. "I should get on to the Thompson place," he said finally, saddling Traveler with careful hands. "They'll be wondering what became of me." Lydia nodded, an unexpected hollowness forming in her chest. "Of course, you've already delayed too long on my account." "Not at all," Cole said, tightening the cinch. "Truth is, Mrs. Zane, these have been the most pleasant days I've spent in a long while." He hesitated, then added, "I'll be working at the Thompson Ranch for the next month or so. Would it be forward of me to call on you again when I have a free day?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with possibilities neither had anticipated when a lame horse brought them together 2 nights ago. "I think I would like that," Lydia answered carefully, surprising herself with her honesty. Cole's face brightened. "Then I'll return if you'll have me. Perhaps I could help with planting that south field we discussed." The casual "we" sent an unexpected warmth through Lydia. "I'd welcome the help," she said, then added more softly, "and the company." As Cole mounted up, he looked down at her with an expression that made her heart beat a little faster. "Thank you, Lydia," he said, using her given name for the first time, "for everything." "Safe travels, Cole," she replied, the name feeling right on her lips. She watched him ride away, the morning sun glinting off his fair hair beneath his hat. Only when he disappeared around the bend did she realize she was smiling, a real smile that reached somewhere deep inside her that had been cold for too long. 2 weeks passed, during which Lydia found herself watching the road more often than she cared to admit. She told herself it was prudent vigilance, especially with Briggs's thinly veiled threat still echoing in her mind. But the truth was simpler and more frightening. She was hoping to see a certain cowboy riding her way. Spring was advancing rapidly across the valley. The meadows were lush with new grass, and wildflowers dotted the hillsides with splashes of color. Lydia found herself noticing the beauty again, something she'd stopped seeing during the long months of grief. She was turning soil in her kitchen garden when the sound of hoofbeats made her straighten up, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. Her heart quickened as she recognized the rider approaching at an easy lope. Cole raised his hand in greeting as he drew closer. He looked different somehow, freshly shaven, his shirt clean and pressed beneath his leather vest. He'd even polished his boots, she noticed as he dismounted. "Mrs. Zane," he said, removing his hat, "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," she replied, suddenly conscious of her work-stained apron and dirt-smudged hands. "I didn't expect to see you so soon. Mr. Thompson gave some of us a day's liberty after we finished the North Pasture roundup." His smile was warm but slightly nervous. "I thought I might make good on my offer to help with that south field." Lydia found herself returning his smile. "I'd appreciate that. But surely there are more entertaining ways for a cowboy to spend his free day than plowing someone else's field." "None that I can think of," he replied with such simple sincerity that Lydia felt color rising in her cheeks. They worked together through the afternoon, preparing the soil for planting. Cole had brought seed corn from the Thompson Ranch, a gift he presented almost shyly. It's their best variety, adapted for our shorter growing season. The hour didn't escape Lydia's notice, as if he already considered himself connected to this valley, to her land. It should have alarmed her, this subtle presumption, but instead it felt right somehow. As the sun began to lower toward the mountains, they sat on the cabin porch, drinking cool water and surveying their day's work. The turned earth of the south field represented more than just agricultural potential. It was a statement of faith in the future, a belief that seeds planted today would yield harvest tomorrow. "Thank you," Lydia said, looking at the field. "I couldn't have done that alone." "We make a good team," Cole observed, his voice casual but his eyes watchful for her reaction. "We do," she agreed softly. That evening she invited him to stay for supper, a stew simmering that was far more elaborate than her usual solitary meals. They ate at her small table, conversation flowing easily between them as twilight deepened outside the windows. "I should go," Cole said finally, though his reluctance was evident. "It's a fair ride back to Thompson's." "You could stay," Lydia offered impulsively. "In the barn, I mean. It's getting dark and the trail can be treacherous at night." Relief and something warmer flickered in Cole's eyes. "If you're sure it's no trouble." "No trouble at all." That night established a pattern that would continue through the spring. Every few days, Cole would ride over, always with some practical purpose, helping with repairs, continuing work on the field, bringing supplies from town. They never acknowledged out loud what was happening between them, this slow, careful courtship conducted through shared work and increasingly personal conversations. Lydia learned that Cole had enlisted at 17, fighting for the Confederacy more from geographical loyalty than political conviction. He'd survived the horrors of Cold Harbor and Petersburg and had been with Lee at Appomattox. The war had left him with nightmares he rarely spoke of and a deep aversion to senseless conflict. In turn, she shared her own story meeting Samuel at a church social in Harrisburg, their whirlwind courtship, and the dreams that had driven them west. She spoke of Samuel's death more freely than before, finding that sharing memories with Cole somehow preserved rather than diminished what she and Samuel had shared. "He would have liked you," she told Cole one evening as they sat by the fire. "Samuel always judged men by their actions, not their words." "I wish I could have known him," Cole replied sincerely. "He must have been exceptional to have won your heart." The compliment lingered between them, along with all the things still unsaid. As May turned to June, the corn in the south field sprouted in neat rows, reaching toward the sun with determined green shoots. Lydia found herself increasingly dividing time into two categories: days with Cole and days waiting for Cole. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. She hadn't expected to feel this way again, hadn't believed the frontier allowed for second chances at happiness. But while their connection deepened, shadows were gathering. Lawrence Briggs had been conspicuously absent, but rumors reached them through Cole's connections at the Thompson Ranch. Briggs was pressing his political connections in Helena, attempting to challenge Lydia's claim to the water rights on her property. More disturbing were whispers that he'd hired new men, hard cases with questionable pasts. "He's not going to give up," Cole warned one evening as they discussed the situation. "Men like Briggs are used to getting what they want." "This land is legally mine," Lydia insisted. "I have all the proper paperwork." "Legal papers don't always count for much out here," Cole said grimly. "Especially when the nearest marshal is 2 days' ride away." The unspoken question hung between them: what would happen when Cole's work at the Thompson Ranch ended? His contract was nearly complete, and a cowboy's life meant following the work from ranch to ranch, season to season. "I've been thinking," Cole said carefully, poking at the fire to avoid meeting her eyes directly. "Thompson offered me a permanent position, foreman of his north section." Lydia's heart quickened. "That's a good opportunity." It would mean staying in the valley, year-round. Now he did look at her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way that made her breath catch. "I'd have a real wage, stability." "What about your wandering ways?" she asked softly. "You've always said you weren't meant to stay in one place." Cole set down the poker and moved to sit beside her on the small sofa. "I'm finding that some things are worth stopping for, Lydia." The use of her given name, still rare between them despite their growing closeness, made her shiver slightly. "Is that what you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To stay." "What I want," he said slowly, his eyes never leaving hers, "is to see if what's growing between us might take root like that corn in the south field, but I won't presume. Your heart has been through enough." Lydia felt tears prickling behind her eyes. "I didn't think I would ever feel this way again," she admitted. "After Samuel died, I was so certain that love couldn't survive out here. That the territory took everything beautiful eventually. And now," Cole asked, hope edging his voice, "now I think perhaps the frontier gives as well as takes. It brought you to my door after all." Cole's hand found hers, his calloused palm warm against her skin. "Lydia Zane, may I court you properly? No more pretending I'm just here to fix fences or plow fields." A smile spread across her face, tremulous but real. "Yes, Cole Callahan. I believe I would like that very much." The next morning, Cole rode out with a promise to return in 3 days. His work at Thompson's was winding down, and soon he would need to give his answer about the foreman position. Both knew his decision would be shaped by whatever was growing between them, this fragile, unexpected second chance that neither had been looking for. But the frontier rarely allows happiness without extracting a price. The following day, Lydia looked up from her washing to see 3 riders approaching, Lawrence Briggs flanked by 2 men she didn't recognize. Unlike Briggs's previous visits, these men made no pretense of civility. Their hands rested openly on their weapons and their expressions promised trouble. Lydia retreated to the cabin, retrieving her shotgun before stepping back onto the porch. "Mr. Briggs," she called out as they drew closer. "I don't recall inviting you onto my property." Briggs reined in, his florid face set in lines of determined anger. "Mrs. Zane, I've been more than patient with you. My last offer was more than generous, but you've chosen to be difficult." His gaze hardened. "I understand your cowboy friend has been spending considerable time here. People are beginning to talk." The implication made Lydia's cheeks burn, but she kept her voice steady. "My personal affairs are none of your concern, Mr. Briggs, nor are they relevant to your continued trespassing." "Perhaps not," Briggs conceded with a cold smile, "but this is." He withdrew a document from his coat pocket. "Notice from the Territorial Land Office. Your claim is being reviewed due to a question about your fulfillment of the homestead requirements. Seems a widow living alone might not be considered capable of improving the land as the law requires." Cold dread settled in Lydia's stomach. The Homestead Act required claimants to build a dwelling and improve the land through cultivation. While she had maintained what she and Samuel started, expansion had been limited by her solitary status. "This is harassment," she said, fighting to keep her voice from trembling. "My claim is valid." "That will be for the Land Commission to decide," Briggs replied, clearly enjoying her distress. "Of course, this legal unpleasantness could be avoided entirely if you were to accept my offer." He named a sum lower than his previous proposal. "Get off my land," Lydia said, raising the shotgun slightly. "No." The 2 men with Briggs tensed, hands moving to their sidearms, but Briggs waved them down. "No need for that, we'll go, but consider your position carefully, Mrs. Zane. A woman alone faces many dangers in this country. Accidents happen. Fires start. It would be a shame if something happened before the Land Commission hearing next month." With that thinly veiled threat hanging in the air, Briggs turned his horse and rode away, his men following close behind. Once they were out of sight, Lydia's legs nearly buckled beneath her. She sank onto the porch steps, the shotgun heavy across her knees. Briggs's threat was clear: sell now or face escalating pressure. The Land Commission hearing was a ploy, but a clever one. Even if she ultimately prevailed, the legal battle would drain what little savings she had left. For the first time since Samuel's death, Lydia found herself wondering if the fight was worth it. Perhaps she should take what money Briggs offered and start fresh somewhere else. The thought of leaving made her heart ache, but so did the prospect of losing everything in a battle she couldn't win. But now there was Cole to consider. What had been growing between them complicated everything. Was it fair to draw him into her troubles? His future at the Thompson Ranch represented security and respect. Why risk that for a woman whose very land might be taken from her? These questions were still churning in her mind the next day when the sound of approaching hooves brought her to the door, shotgun in hand. Relief flooded through her when she recognized Cole's lean figure, though he wasn't expected for another 2 days. "Lydia," he called, dismounting before Traveler had fully stopped. "Are you all right?" Thompson got word that Briggs was making threats. She lowered the gun, emotion tightening her throat at the concern in his face. "I'm fine. He came yesterday with some legal nonsense about challenging my claim." Cole's expression darkened as she explained Briggs's visit and the threatened land commission hearing. "This isn't about legal claims," he said when she finished. "It's about bullying you off your land because he thinks you're vulnerable." "He's right though, isn't he?" Lydia said, voicing her deepest fear. "A woman alone can't fight someone like Briggs. He has money, connections, men willing to do his dirty work." "You're not alone," Cole said firmly, taking her hands in his. The simple declaration nearly undid her. "Cole, I can't ask you to involve yourself in this. You have a future at the Thompson Ranch. This isn't your fight." His eyes held hers, steady and certain. "Lydia Zane, from the moment my horse went lame on your property, I think this was always going to be my fight." He squeezed her hands gently. "Besides, Thompson despises Briggs. When I told him what was happening, he offered to help in any way he could." Hope flickered within her. "What can we do?" "First, we document everything you've done to improve the land. Thompson knows the land commissioner personally. He says the man is honest, can't be bought by Briggs. Then we gather witnesses, neighbors who can testify that you've maintained the homestead properly since Samuel's death." His confidence buoyed her spirits. "Do you really think we can win?" "I know we can," Cole said, and for the first time since Briggs's visit, Lydia believed it might be possible. They spent the day strategizing and working on the farm, Cole's presence a bulwark against the fear that had threatened to overwhelm her. As evening approached, neither mentioned him leaving. It seemed understood that he would stay, that facing what was coming would be done together. After supper, they sat on the porch watching twilight settle over the valley. Fireflies were beginning to dance over the meadow, their tiny lights blinking in the gathering darkness. "There's something I need to tell you," Cole said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Something about my past that you should know, especially now." Lydia turned to look at him, concerned by the sudden seriousness in his voice. "After the war," he continued, "I drifted west like a lot of former soldiers, took work where I could find it. In Texas, I fell in with some men who weren't particular about the law." He paused, his face troubled in the fading light. "I never stole or killed outside of defending myself, but I rode with men who did. It's not something I'm proud of." "What happened?" Lydia asked quietly. "A job went wrong, a man died who shouldn't have. I left that life behind, headed north where no one knew me." His eyes met hers, apprehensive but honest. "I've built a clean reputation since then, but if Briggs starts digging into my past, he might find things that could hurt you by association." Lydia considered his words carefully. "Is there a price on your head, wanted posters?" "No, I was never identified by name in anything serious, but rumors follow a man." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." Her hand found his in the darkness. "We all have parts of our past we'd rather leave behind. The frontier is built on second chances." The relief in his eyes was palpable. "You're not troubled by it." "The man who helped plant my field, who stood up to Briggs without violence, who treats my land with respect, that's the man I'm coming to care for," she said simply. "The past has shaped you, but it doesn't define you." Cole's hand tightened around hers. "Lydia," he said softly, her name almost a prayer on his lips, "I never expected to find you." "Nor I you," she admitted. "I thought the frontier had taken my chance at happiness when it took Samuel. And now," she smiled in the gathering darkness, "now I'm beginning to believe that perhaps love can survive out here after all. That maybe the harshness makes it stronger, like wheat that withstands drought." Under the vast Montana sky, with fireflies dancing around them and the scent of pine in the air, Cole leaned forward. His kiss was gentle, a question as much as an affirmation. Lydia answered by drawing closer, allowing herself to embrace this unexpected second chance. That night changed everything between them. Though propriety was still maintained, Cole sleeping in the barn while Lydia remained in the cabin, they had acknowledged what was growing between them. What had begun as chance encounter was blossoming into something neither had been looking for but both now cherished. The following weeks brought both joy and tension. Cole divided his time between finishing his work at the Thompson Ranch and helping Lydia prepare for the Land Commission hearing. Together, they documented every improvement to the property, gathered statements from neighbors who had traded with Lydia or received her help, and compiled evidence of Briggs's pattern of intimidation against other small landholders. Their efforts did not go unnoticed. Briggs escalated his pressure, sending men to ride the boundaries of Lydia's property at night, leaving gates open so her few cattle strayed, and spreading rumors in town about the widow's shameful arrangement with the drifter. The situation came to a head one evening in late June. Cole had ridden to town to mail their documentation to the land commissioner and wasn't expected back until morning. Lydia was alone in the cabin when she heard the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. She grabbed her shotgun and moved to the window in time to see flames erupting from the barn. Heart pounding, she rushed outside. Two mounted figures were visible at the edge of her property, watching as the fire took hold. Lydia raised her shotgun and fired a warning shot, causing the riders to retreat into the darkness. Then she turned her attention to the blaze. The barn was already engulfed, the dry timber catching quickly. Alone, there was little she could do but ensure the fire didn't spread to the cabin or the nearby fields. She worked frantically with buckets of water from the well, soaking the ground between the barn and other structures. By dawn, the barn was nothing but smoldering ruins. Lydia sat exhausted on the porch steps, her face smudged with soot, her dress singed in places. That's how Cole found her when he returned, riding hard up the trail at first light. "Lydia," he called, dismounting before Traveler had fully stopped. "My God, what happened? Are you hurt?" She shook her head, too tired for tears. "Briggs's men, they came in the night." Cole's face hardened as he surveyed the destruction. "This ends now," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Cole, no," Lydia said, grabbing his arm as he turned toward his horse. "That's what they want, to provoke you into doing something that will discredit us before the hearing." "They could have killed you," he said, anger and fear making his voice shake. "Next time it might be the cabin with you inside." "All the more reason to win through the law, not violence," she insisted. "The hearing is in 2 days. Mr. Thompson's testimony will carry weight. We can still win this." Cole struggled visibly with his anger but finally nodded. "You're right, but after this, you're not staying here alone. It's not safe." That night, despite convention, Cole slept inside the cabin, his bedroll near the door, his revolver within reach. Neither had any illusions about Briggs's willingness to escalate further. The next day brought unexpected support. Word of the barn burning had spread, and several neighboring homesteaders rode over, offering help and outrage at Briggs's tactics. Even more surprising was the arrival of Jacob Thompson himself, the owner of the ranch where Cole worked. Thompson was a weathered man in his 60s, his face lined by decades under the Montana sun. He surveyed the burned barn with narrowed eyes. "Briggs has gone too far this time," he declared. "First thing tomorrow, I'm riding to Helena with you both. The land commissioner needs to see this pattern of intimidation firsthand." His support was a powerful counterweight to Briggs's influence. As one of the oldest and most respected ranchers in the territory, Thompson's word carried significant weight. For the first time since Briggs had begun his campaign, Lydia felt genuine hope. That evening, after Thompson departed with a promise to return at dawn, Lydia and Cole sat by the fire, their future hanging in the balance of tomorrow's hearing. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Cole said, taking her hand, "I want you to know something." He met her eyes steadily. "I love you, Lydia Zane. I think I have since that first night when you helped my horse and faced me down with that shotgun." Tears filled Lydia's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I never thought I'd say those words again after Samuel, never thought I'd feel this way." "If we win tomorrow," Cole continued, "I'd like to rebuild that barn, plant next year's fields. Face whatever comes next together." His eyes searched hers. "Would you consider making this officially our home, not just yours? Would you consider becoming my wife?" Through her tears, Lydia smiled. "Yes," she said simply. "To all of it, yes." They sealed the promise with a kiss, the future suddenly bright with possibility despite the challenges still ahead. The Territorial Land Office in Helena was an imposing building of brick and stone, a symbol of the encroaching civilization that was slowly taming the Montana wilderness. Lydia felt distinctly out of place as she, Cole, and Thompson entered, her best dress still plain compared to the finery of the government officials and lawyers who populated the halls. Lawrence Briggs was already there, accompanied by a slick-looking attorney from back east. His confident smirk suggested he expected an easy victory. The hearing itself was a tense affair. Briggs's lawyer presented arguments challenging Lydia's ability as a widow to properly maintain and improve the homestead claim. He emphasized the lack of substantial new improvements since Samuel's death and hinted at her inappropriate relationship with Cole, suggesting her moral character was questionable. When Lydia's turn came, she stood with quiet dignity. With Cole and Thompson flanking her supportively, she presented their carefully prepared documentation records of crops planted, livestock maintained, repairs completed. Thompson testified to her standing in the community and her consistent fulfillment of homestead requirements despite difficult circumstances. Then came the evidence of Briggs's intimidation, sworn statements from neighbors who had witnessed his men trespassing, an account of the barn burning, and documentation of similar tactics used against other small landholders who had refused to sell to him. "Commissioner," Thompson said in conclusion, his weathered voice carrying the weight of decades on the frontier, "this hearing isn't about homestead requirements. It's about a powerful man using any means necessary to bully a woman he perceives as vulnerable. If we allow such tactics to succeed, we undermine the very purpose of the Homestead Act, to give honest, hardworking people a chance to build something of their own in this territory." The land commissioner, a stern-faced man named Hargrove, considered all the evidence in silence. Finally, he spoke. "Mr. Briggs, these allegations of intimidation and destruction of property are very serious. If proven in a court of law, they could result in criminal charges." Briggs shifted uncomfortably. "Pure fabrication, Commissioner. Mrs. Zane is clearly seeking to distract from her failure to properly maintain her claim." "Be that as it may," Hargrove continued, "I find no evidence that Mrs. Zane has failed to meet the requirements of the Homestead Act. Her claim remains valid and unchallenged. This hearing is concluded in her favor." Relief washed over Lydia in a dizzying wave. Cole's hand found hers, squeezing gently in shared triumph. Briggs's face darkened with anger, but with so many witnesses present, he could only nod stiffly and depart with his lawyer. Outside the land office in the bright Montana sunshine, Cole lifted Lydia off her feet in an exuberant embrace, propriety momentarily forgotten in their joy. "You did it," he said, setting her down gently. "Your land is secure." "We did it," she corrected, happiness making her bold enough to straighten his collar in public. "I couldn't have fought this alone." Thompson watched them with knowing eyes. "I suspect Briggs will think twice before troubling either of you again, but if he doesn't," the old rancher added with a glint in his eye, "he'll have the entire Thompson outfit to contend with. We take care of our own in this valley." The inclusion of Lydia in that statement wasn't lost on her or Cole. Their place in the community had been cemented by this shared victory. The journey back to the homestead was filled with plans and possibilities. Cole would accept the foreman position at the Thompson Ranch, providing steady income while they rebuilt what Briggs's men had destroyed. The wedding would be small but proper, held in the little church in town where Lydia occasionally attended services. "What about the house?" Cole asked as they rode. "Should we expand it?" "There's good timber on the North Ridge." Lydia smiled at the casual way he spoke of their future together. "An extra room would be nice," she said, "especially if," she let the implication hang in the air between them. Cole's eyes widened slightly, then warmed with understanding. "Especially then," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "A family needs space to grow." 3 weeks later, on a perfect July evening, Lydia Zane became Lydia Callahan in a simple ceremony attended by Thompson and his wife, several ranch hands, and neighboring homesteaders who had supported her through the conflict with Briggs. She wore a blue dress that matched her eyes, with wildflowers in her chestnut hair. Cole stood tall and proud in a new shirt and polished boots, his face alight with joy as they spoke their vows. The celebration afterward was held on their property, tables set up in the shade of the old cottonwoods. The South Field's corn stood knee-high now, a testament to their shared labor and faith in the future. Where the barn had stood, new timber was already stacked, ready for rebuilding. As twilight painted the mountains purple and gold, Cole led Lydia away from the guests to a quiet spot overlooking their land. In the distance, fireflies were beginning to emerge, their tiny lights dancing above the meadow grass. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, leaning against him. "When Samuel died, I was so certain that the frontier only took. That love couldn't survive out here." "And now," Cole prompted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Lydia smiled up at her husband, her heart full. "Now I know that the frontier gives as well as takes. It gave me you, it gave us this." She gestured to their land, their home, their future stretching out before them. "It gave us a second chance at love when neither of us was looking for it." Cole's kiss was gentle, a promise sealed beneath the vast Montana sky. "One fateful night, a lame horse brought me to your door," he murmured against her lips. "I think that was the luckiest injury traveler ever suffered." Lydia laughed softly. "Perhaps we should thank him properly." Hand in hand, they walked back toward their celebration, toward their guests, toward the life they would build together. The path ahead would not always be easy. The frontier would continue to test them with harsh winters, unpredictable harvests, and the constant challenges of carving civilization from wilderness. But they faced it together now, their love a shelter in the vastness of the Montana territory. What had begun as chance, one cowboy, one widow, one fateful night, had blossomed into something neither had believed possible. A love strong enough to weather whatever the Wild West might bring. In the years that followed, their homestead flourished. The barn was rebuilt, stronger than before. The cabin expanded room by room as their family grew. The south field yielded bountiful harvests of corn that became legendary in the valley for its quality. And on summer evenings, long after Lawrence Briggs had moved on to other schemes, Cole and Lydia would sit on their porch, watching their children play in the same meadow where fireflies had danced on the night they first acknowledged their love. They had discovered what the frontier truly offered to those brave enough to claim it, not just land and opportunity, but the chance to build something lasting from nothing. A home, a family, a love as expansive as the Montana sky above them.